Security, Medicare, retirement, disability, survivor benefits, your check. We want to make sure that it's there in the future. So we've got more attempts to kind of discredit the Social Security Administration, and as an attempt to discredit it, they're pulling out the old chestnut about illegal immigrants stealing all your Social Security. And so this is actually a good thing that they're kind of pulling this out again. And we'll talk about that because it proves all of the stories that have been told for the last few decades. I did a video yesterday where I talk about the Social Security Trust Fund, that old chestnut that they pull out trying to attack Social Security, and how that has been proven, wrong, that it's not stolen. It is actually there. It's, not fake IOUs. So Elon Musk and Doge and everything is actually doing they might be double agents. I think they're playing three-dimensional chess or something. But Elon Musk just might be a double agent, and he might be working for, I don't know, the Democratic Party or liberals, or, Nancy Pelosi or whatever the case may be. But it's interesting because he is taking all of the arguments that have been used against Social Security and just kind of exposing them as, hey, okay, there's nothing there, which is good. It's finally clearing the decks, so we as Americans can finally get our politicians to solve the problems of Social Security and to make sure your checks aren't cut in the future, which inevitably they will be because of the Social Security Trust Fund being depleted. It's being, it's in your checks right now. So I talked about this several times. And this is also a live Q&A. So let's go ahead and get into it. And that way I can get into a live Q&A as soon as possible here and help you all make sure you're getting everything you're eligible for from Social Security. So if you have any questions about your particular case, retirement, disability, survivor, Medicare, Medicaid, or anything like that, make sure you type it in the comments there. And as soon as we talk about, I'm trying to figure out what comedy duo this team is, whether it's an Abbott, Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Cheech or Chong, Martin Lewis. But let's you can put it in live Q&A. What comedy duo do you think this two represents the most? Okay, so we've got Elon Musk, and I'm going to show this on my little thing. I'm always hesitant to get copyright infringement, so I'm going to show it on my little laptop thingy here. So we've got in Wisconsin Elon Musk and one of his private equity guys that have been deep into Social Security. Not exactly sure why private equity is in Social Security. Well, I know exactly why private equity is in Social Security, but I'll pretend like I don't. But he is knee deep in Social Security, and he's trying to find any type of fraud, waste, or abuse in Social Security. They haven't come up with any yet, really. There is fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security, but not to the scale that they need to justify, closing down the agency, even though the acting commissioner already said he was going to close down the agency, and then he slept on it and he decided not to. Okay, so I'm going to play a little clip of their attempts to tie Social Security and say Social Security is all corrupt and it's incompetent and all this kind of stuff, and use the old chestnut of immigration, fear of foreigners, and all the rest of it. So let's watch this, and then we'll break it down with actual proof.
Antonio, can you tell us what you Antonio is helping out with the Social Security? So just trying to review Social Security, where you may have heard that we found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database. This is so crazy. And then you'll notice there's a strange trend here where how many Social Security numbers were issued. Do you want to?
Yeah, so let me tell you what happened here. We started at the top of the system.
You're going to talk about a lot of it.
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came with a big list of stuff that we're working on. You've heard some of that already, but this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we're like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. This country's been great to us. My brother and sister are all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political. This is about America and the future of America. And there are a lot of good people in the system that pointed this in this direction. I want to honor them right now. They work in the government today, who took risks to show us these numbers and tell us what's going on. Yeah. So I want to stop for a minute. I want to honor those people today. Very good people.
Brutus was an honorable man.
I have been from D.C. to Social Security offices to the border to track this down, and very good people have helped us along the way. I want to thank them.
Yeah.
This number, what this is when you come in the country, if you're illegal, there's a couple ways to come in. You come in through a port of entry, and you can tell them you're afraid. They'll give you an asylum case. You'll get an interview. Then you get in. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just go to the border. Literally, this happened. I talked to Border Patrol myself. Elon was there too. I went to Laredo, and I went to Bronzeville. Elon went to Eagle Pass. You walk up to a Border Patrol officer, and you tell them you want to come in. They have a couple of choices. They could charge you with a misdemeanor or a felony under 1325, or they can make it an administrative offense, like a parking ticket, basically. They were told to do that, make it an administrative offense under the last administration. And then you go walk across the border. They do what's called a release your recognizance, and they give you an NTA, notice to appear, which to appear to judge. The wait times on judges are like average 6 years. Look at Grok, you'll see it on immigration judges. There's only 700 of them. This is 5.5 million people. Okay, so what happens then? Once you're in the country and you got asylum through one of these pathways, we map the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765, it's the work form. You get this form called the 766, that's the authorization, and then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security number. No interview. No ID.
This is worth just reiterating. It's not people sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep. They weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
Look, if I hadn't seen this myself, I'm not sure I believed it. I went through it myself and mapped it. And Elon is right. This is true. The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people. And minimum collection, that's what's happening. We found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example.
Okay. All right. This, I was trying to think, there's something that his last statement, Elon Musk, reminds me of for those movie buffs out there, the old George C. Scott, Peter Sellers, Dr. Strangelove.
And the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids. Incredibly.
Gotta love Peter Sellers in that one. Anyway, there's no fighting in the war room. All right, so let's break this. He says, go ahead, use Grok. You can use Grok, which is the AI that Elon Musk, his company started. And it's an AI. He said it's the most authoritative. It's the best one out there. So guess what? I used his Grok AI, and I went through the numbers. And what's interesting, he says, the guy says, Antonio Grasso, again, we're going to follow the money here. Always follow the money. There's always there's trillions of dollars involved, and it's your money. He said, this is mind-blowing that these people are getting Social Security numbers. Well, the people on stage, him and Elon Musk, well, not him, because Antonio was born in the United States. He was born in Michigan. But he said his brothers and sisters, his father was born in Goa, India. His mother was born in Spain. So they are on that list. That big PowerPoint he had up there, they were on that list many, many years ago. They were on that list. They came over this country and they were accepted in whatever because they were relatives or asylees or refugees, or they won the lottery or whatever the case may be. They came over legally. They did, whatever. And rather than, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, we bring people in this country and we're not going to let them work. So if we bring people legally into the country, why was there a big uptick in 2024? Because it was the end of the pandemic and there was great demand. So a lot of people, brought in, foreign workers in 2024. That's one of the reasons it increased. But it's you either allow people that are coming in the country legally to work, and if you said, hey, you can come into the country in whatever program we have available, and you can debate immigration law all day long, and that's not what we're talking about here. But if you allow people to come in legally and say, okay, don't be on welfare, don't be on Social Security or anything like that, but we're not going to give you a Social Security number to work. And it's like, okay, you can't have it both ways. Either these people have to eat and pay rent and everything, so they have to be able to work. And how are you able to work? You get legal status, you get the I-94, the visa, and you get a Social Security number. And a lot of these asylees, you see them conflating. He is conflating. He says all these people came in and they got Social Security numbers. Yes, the people that come in, students come in, go to school, and Elon Musk came in and he got a Social Security card, and Antonio's parents came in and they got Social Security cards, and that's how it works. And when you go through the system since 2002, Social Security has worked with immigration. And that says, okay, once you process all the paperwork, they've done your interview, you've gotten your ID, you've got all of their stuff, you've allowed them in there. Since you've already gone through all that, let's make it more efficient. And once you've gone all that and you give them legal status in the United States, we'll go ahead and send them out a Social Security card. It's enumeration at entry, it's called. It's the same thing that when you have a new baby at a hospital, you don't have to go down to the local Social Security office and get a Social Security number for the baby. Social Security Administration has what's called enumeration at birth. So when at the hospital, you apply for a Social Security number at the hospital. It's another way the Social Security Administration is trying to be more efficient over the last few decades. But, these people are holding it against the Social Security Administration. All right. So here's claim one. The defaults in the system of Social Security to all benefit programs have been set to max exclusion. I've never heard that. I worked for the Social Security Administration for a few decades. I've processed hundreds of thousands of claims. I've never heard of max inclusion, max pay for these, and minimum collection. This is why I say this is, I don't think it's a Martin and Lewis. Neither of them one as slick as Martin or as funny as Lewis. Laurel and Hardy were more of a, kind of a, physical comedy. So I think it's more of an Abbott and Costello type thing, the who's on first. I think that's their routine there. So Social Security, okay. You can't get Social Security benefits if you don't have legal status in this country. Period. Full stop. That's it. I'll give you the example I give my regular viewers know this. It doesn't happen very often anymore, but I and other people throughout the country that work Social Security Administration, I've taken hundreds of thousands of retirement claims. And a few years ago, once Vietnam vets were becoming retirement age, 62, 67, or whatever the case may be, every now and then, about in my office, about once a year or so, a couple of times a year, we would have a person come in that has worked in the United States, since Vietnam. They were drafted in Vietnam. They spent, a year, one tour, or two tours, got a Purple Heart, Silver Star, great, honorable discharge, the whole 9 yards. And they came into the Social Security Administration decades later, and we said, sorry, we can't give you money. Yes, you worked in the United States since the 1970s. You raised your family here. You got kids here, but we can't give you money. Why? Because you don't have legal status in the United States. What it was is people, usually from Canada, their parents came over from Canada when they were young in the 60s or something, and the parents didn't do the immigration thing correctly. And the children at the time didn't have, the green card or U.S. citizenship or whatever the case may be. And during Vietnam, any warm-blooded person was good enough to go to Vietnam. So they kind of, didn't really look at that. So 40 years later, said, sorry, it shows you were born in Montreal or Toronto or Kitchener or wherever the case may be. And, you have your green card. And it's like, what do you mean? I don't have a green card. I served in Vietnam, see this hole? Sorry, we can't give you benefits until you prove your legal status in the United States. We helped them, and they, contacted their congressman and, rushed the whole thing, and they eventually got their money. But that's an indication You cannot get Social Security benefits. You cannot get retirement benefits. Obviously, if you know, you can't get retirement benefits until you work 10 years, 40 quarters, obviously. But even if you work 10 years, there's a lot of illegal immigrants that come into the country. They work under fake Social Security numbers, and that person doesn't have to be dead. The whole 20 million, he's obsessed with that 20 million Social Security people over 200 years old that are not receiving any money. He hasn't proven they've received any money because they haven't received any money. That's a different database. I think I've beaten that one into the ground in terms of talking to people about that one. But you can't get retirement benefits. You can't get spouse benefits or disability benefits or anything like that until you prove your status in the United States. And that's just a reality. So this whole thing about max inclusion and all that. So what about other benefits? Medicaid. Well, it says federal law restricts undocumented immigrants from most benefits. Medicaid covers only emergency services for undocumented individuals, less than 1% of annual spending. So, I mean, I like to think Americans were compassionate people. So if someone walks up to a hospital and after a terrible car accident or something like that, we don't check ID. We don't check whether you're insured. The doctors, the Hippocratic Oath, they take care of them. So the 1.3 million figure likely includes legal immigrants like his family and Elon Musk, or mixed status household. That means, mother and father, or, maybe the mother's, doesn't have correct documentation, but the father does, and the kids were born in the United States. So that type of thing. Not just undocumented ones. No evidence exists of a systemic default policy under Biden or any administration to maximize inclusion or payments while minimizing verification. So, and this asylee thing. So they're conflating these numbers. They're kind of doing the who's on first type of thing. And they're saying asylees, come in here and do the I-994 and do this. Number one, only about 20, again, I checked Elon Musk's AI, and it says about 20 or 30% of people are approved for asylee. The other majority of people are not approved for asylee status. And then it takes years, 1, 2, 3 years to get that approved. And if you get asylee status, guess what? That means you're legal. You were approved to come in the United States. You're asylee. And once you're asylum, and then asylum has been around since the 1980s, has been around for over 40 years. It was part of the whole Cold War thing where, we wanted to show the rest of the world how compassionate we were. And if Russians wanted to escape from the Soviet Union, if people wanted to escape from, communist infiltration in Central America, we said, hey, we are the bastion of democracy. Come over to our country. We've got you with open arms. And that's when the asylum thing started. And if you disagree with that, then it's fine then, but don't keep blaming the Social Security Administration for following congressional laws that says if a person is approved for asylum status, then they are allowed to work, and you have to give them a Social Security card so they can pay into the system, so they can pay into taxes. So they keep trying to blame Social Security. They did the whole thing about 20 million people, and again I talked about that are receiving benefits, but as I mentioned, nobody is being paid out of the database he is looking at. Okay. So the 1.3 million found on Medicaid, again, undocumented immigrants are ineligible for Medicaid under federal law 42 USC. So you can look it up there. So, and the 1.3 million asylum applications, those are probably what they're looking at is pending applications. So you got 1.3 million pending asylum applications, and only about 20 or 30% of those are approved. You don't get a Social Security number until it's approved. So they're conflating two things. You notice he said that you come in this country illegally, and then he starts talking about asylum status. Well, asylum status is legal entry into the United States if you're approved. So the verdict, according to Elon Musk's AI, if them means undocumented immigrants, this is false. 1.3 million aren't on Medicaid beyond emergency services. If it includes legal immigrants or citizens in mixed status family, it's plausible, but misrepresents the undocumented focus. So the final answer, according to AI, is the claims are largely false and misleading, which I agree. No evidence supports a systemic policy shift to maximize benefits for undocumented immigrants, nor do 1.3 million undocumented individuals receive full Medicaid. And the 5.5 million he mentions are talking about encounters at the border. The assertions reflect exaggeration or misinterpretation of immigration and benefit data, not verifiable policy or outcomes. And why? The creators, that is, Abbott and Costello there, likely aimed. I mean, how else could you? I mean, if something is so easily disproven, these guys are intelligent people. They run billion-dollar companies. They are, I assume, they're intelligent. And why would they get up on stage and say something that is just so incorrect and so easily proven to be incorrect, other than being a comedy duo or something more nefarious? All right. The creators likely aim to exploit immigration fears for political gain. Yeah, it's old chestnut going back to, thousands of years. Mobilizing voters, pushing restrictive laws, and undermining democratic credibility using exaggerated or misinterpreted data. The 5.5, 1.3, Medicaid. Here's the key that we're focused on. My focus is Social Security, making sure your checks don't get cut in the future. And this is where we're following the money here. The SSA tie-in is a strategic choice to personalize the issue, leveraging its symbolic weight to make the allegations hit harder emotionally and economically. It's a classic play. Turn a bureaucratic process into a scandal to drive partisan agenda. And yes, these allegations could attack Social Security by portraying it as wasteful. Here's the key to it all. Here's why they keep bringing Social Security. If you disagree with asylum status, okay, then focus on, they should go up there and they say, we don't believe that we should have asylum. We've had asylum, system in this country for 40 years, and we think it should end. Okay, fine. Then we'll make that argument. But don't make up numbers and then start blaming the Social Security Administration for sending out Social Security numbers to people that have passed, that a judge has adjudicated that, yes, you are an asylee and now you're legal in this country. So the SSA tie-in, it is wasteful, unsustainable, and politically corrupted, reinforcing privatization as a solution. That's the key. The SSA tie-in leverages its visibility and economic weight to make the case visceral. Immigrants as the straw breaking the system's back. So this is the problem with Social Security, is these fake Social Security numbers, which they have found $0 being paid to those Social Security numbers. They ran up that tree and there was nothing in the tree. So they're like, okay, well, there was nothing there. So let's try something else. Oh, immigrants are always good to beat up on. The purpose isn't just immigration fear-mongering, but could also serve a deeper agenda, dismantling a cornerstone of New Deal ideological and economic gain. Whether intentional by the video's creators or opportunistic for others, it fits a pattern of using crisis, real or fabricated, to push systemic change. So New Deal, Social Security was started in 1935. And whose benefits? Here's the money. Who benefits from privatization of Social Security? Because here's the argument. Social Security is so corrupt. They're doing a terrible job. They're giving out money to, illegals and undocumented and dead people and all that. So they're just doing a terrible job. So we need to give that over to Wall Street and maybe somebody on stage. The financial sector stands to gain the most from Social Security privatization. Billions in revenue with little risk, followed by high income earners and ideological conservatives. The video's allegations could fuel this by discrediting Social Security's integrity, making privatization a solution to a fabricated immigrant-driven crisis. Low earners, retirees, and taxpayers, however, could face losses, highlighting the trade-off. Profit and privilege for some, insecurity for many. And who was on stage? Antonio Gracias could benefit from Social Security privatization through, he is the CEO of Valor Equity Partners, a private equity firm, potential to manage new accounts, boosting fees and investment opportunities, and via his personal wealth tied to market growth. His Social Security role under Doge enhances this prospect, leveraging his Musk alliance and private equity acumen. However, he'd be one of the many beneficiaries. Financial firms and high earners broadly would gain more systematically, unless Valor carves a unique niche. Without explicit privatization intent for Gracias, his benefit hinges on policy outcomes beyond his sole control. But his current position makes him a plausible winner if it happens. So he is betting his integrity, basically, that we will be tricked. And there's a lot of people, it looks like I've already got a bunch of questions or comments there that they bought into the whole thing. They believe, Trump and Elon Musk as Trump's mouthpiece, 100%. So yeah. All right. So we have followed the money, and this is same old thing they've been pulling since 1935. If you look at my YouTube description, this was a plan of attack. Elon Musk didn't write this up. Antonio Gracias didn't write this up. This is a plan. This is a playbook written in the 1980s. And I've got the playbook in my YouTube description. Go down there and you'll see the attempts. And they're going exactly by the playbook. And the only way to stop it is to do what we're doing here and have a little fun and decide what comedy duo. You got to laugh, and old Marine Corps humor here, kind of gallows humor. You got to laugh in the face of danger. So, all right, let's get to some actual questions, and let's see. So that's the long term. Trying to make sure cuts don't happen in the future. Trying to make sure Social Security isn't privatized. But now let's focus on what's going on right now with you. And as always, the live Q&A helping you is sponsored by Chapter Medicare. So if you got any questions, reach out to them. If you're illegal, you're not allowed to have a Social Security unless the government give it to you voluntarily for fraud purposes. This is what happened, common sense. Yeah, if you're not in the country legally, there are people that, work, and they work under ITN numbers or fake Social Security numbers, someone else's Social Security number, and they pay into Social Security. And guess what? That is a donation. Thank you very much. The Social Security Trust Fund, people that are eligible for Social Security take advantage of that money that these people pay in, that they will never get out unless somehow they become legal later. But yeah, it's estimated that $20-30 billion every year is donated to the Social Security Trust Fund by people working in this country legally. So I say, thank you. Please hit the like button. Dr. Ed is fighting a fierce dragon in this thing. Thank you very much. Yeah, is it kind of the windmill Don Quixote, I guess, sometimes. But all right, let's see here. Why would these billionaires waste their time and effort to give about SSA when they could be living large and enjoying life rather than dealing with all this BS? Angling King, I have no idea. They got more money than, come on. They got billions of dollars, but I agree with you. Why? I mean, it's a competition. It's, rockets and anyway. But yeah, it's a competition to see who's the big man on the street. It says, oh, you've got $10 billion. Oh, I got $20 billion. Oh, I got $500 billion. And just, yeah, there's never enough for, some people. There's never enough. Never enough hair for me, but anyway. Ever since October, November, I've not been able to listen to the biased narrative against Trump and the MAGA movement ever since. Okay. All right. This money came right out of my paycheck. This is my money. Where does Elon have a voice? Yeah. And what's interesting is that he doesn't pay as much as you do into Social Security, probably. Definitely, I know 100% as a percentage, you pay, and probably everybody on here pays into FICA tax, that 6.2% on 100% of your paycheck, 365 days of the year. But those that make over $176,100 are exempt from FICA Social Security tax. And so he's probably, and then the way he gets his money, he probably doesn't pay FICA tax at all. So he is not really in it. And people say, well, he does pay as the other, as he pays as the employer, but he takes that, he figures that out anyway. So, as all employers do. They say, okay, I'm going to pay this person. How much should I pay this person? I have to take in consideration. I have to pay unemployment. I have to pay health insurance. I have to pay workers' comp. I have to pay this. And then whatever's left over, then that's what you get as an hourly, that's how calculations are done. Anthony, what's up, Anthony? I've been looking for someone that handles federal appeals. Do you know anyone? Can't find anyone in Las Vegas area. Yeah, it really depends. Richard Harris is a good person there, a lawyer. But yeah, it really depends. If you're talking disability, most lawyers are very picky in terms of what disability claims they will represent. And that's why lawyers always get, they always do these ads where they say, hey, if you use us, we're 3 times, our success rate is 3 times higher than if you file yourself. And it's like, yeah, because they're picky and choose, they choose which cases they want to accept. They're like, oh yeah, well, it doesn't look, you're going to win. No, I'm not going to represent. You're not going to win. I'm not going to represent. Oh, this looks like a really good case. You're probably going to win this one. And if you win, I'm going to make money. So yeah, of course they're going to get a higher, success rate. But yeah, if they're not going to make money on you, and they are businesses, if they're not going to make money on your particular case, get back pay, 25% of your back pay on disability, then yeah, most disability type lawyers won't accept you. But if you, just like any lawyer, if you pay a lawyer, bunch of money, they'll do it. So when this guy uses Grok to get info, it's correct. But when Elon does it wrong, info, come on, this guy knows his audience and is feeling y'all the info you're looking for just BS. Why is the Social Security funds low? Okay. No, I don't think they use Grok because the arguments that they brought up there. It's like, yeah, these millions of people are receiving Social Security numbers. Yes, millions of people receive Social Security numbers every year that are non-citizens. What's the problem with non-citizens receiving Social Security numbers? People, get married to someone from overseas and they bring them to the country, and that, the husband and wife get Social Security numbers. They adopt children from overseas. Angelina Jolie got a whole bunch of Social Security numbers for non-citizens, to begin with. And so, yeah, what's the deal with Social Security non-citizens receiving Social Security numbers? I don't think I saw that on the Statue of Liberty, bring over your huddled masses, but no Social Security numbers. Yeah, it makes no sense. Why are the Social Security funds low? Must be a new viewer here. All right. A1, Social Security, and then the numbers are for 2023. The 2024 numbers aren't out yet, but about $1.1 trillion came into Social Security through FICA tax, through taxes on Social Security benefits, on interest from the trust fund. But about 1.2 trillion went out. So 1.1 came in, 1.2 trillion went out. What covers the gap of about $70 billion for 2023? The trust fund. The trust fund. So it was about $2.7 trillion. And every year money is being taken out of that trust fund and put in your check. So A1, if you're receiving a Social Security check, then that's where the money is. It's in your paycheck, about 8-9% or so. That's where the trust fund. And obviously when you take money out of savings, it gets depleted. So, and then it's set to be completely empty in 2034. And because this much is coming in and that much we need to get paid out, there's nothing to cover the gap. So that only that amount can be paid out. And at about 2033, 2034, everybody's going to get a cut about 21-22% or so. And if some of the things that the current president are talking about gets passed, then there's going to be more cuts and it's going to be sooner. So it's just a matter of, savings. And, it's the baby boomers that put that money into the trust fund for their future, and, and they're taking it out. It's their money. So retired in March at 62, working over $400 over 1950. Should I report monthly to Social Security? Okay. So, all right. So this is the difference between a annual earnings limit and a monthly earnings limit. So if you're going to, for the entire year, you're making over 23,400. Well, let's say if you're going to be under 23,400 for the entire year, since January all the way to December, if you're going to be under $23,400, no worries. Don't worry about it. You're good. But if you're going to be over that for the entire year, then Social Security switches to the monthly earnings limit. So, March, you're going to be 62 with last month. So you can't collect unless you were born basically the first of the month, second of the month. You have to be 62 the entire month. So probably you won't be entitled to your retirement benefits until April this month. Okay. All right. So it doesn't matter what you made January, February, March. If you made $1 billion in January, $1 billion in March, or February, $1 billion in March, Social Security doesn't care. They will ask you when you file starting in April, they will say, okay, we don't care what you made before, but how much are you going to make going forward? Starting in April, your first check, even though your April check doesn't come until May, it always comes a month late, but it's considered the April check. Starting in April, you have to stay under $1,950. And you have to stay under $1,950 for the rest of the year, all the way up to December. If you go over that, then yeah, you're going to have an overpayment. And the Doge Social Security just changed the policy on overpayments. So usually in some situation, I recommended kind of a strategic overpayment where people would do, but probably not anymore because they will, hold back everything. Donna, that was nothing to do with it. Okay, well, something. Private equity will increase operating costs of Social Security. Who pays? You do. Yeah, I've always said this. I ran the third business Social Security office in the country, and I had about 100 employees, and several $1 billion came in and out of my office every single year. And I'm not going to complain. I was a government employee, federal worker, and I was getting good money, but I definitely wasn't getting type of money someone that had some type of financial office that they had 100 employees and billions of dollars was coming in and out of that particular office. So if that office that I worked at was turned over to a private entity, I think the manager of that office would probably be receiving 10 times what I was receiving, or 20 times what I was receiving. So yeah. So the costs are going to be, and it's the old, heads I win, tails you would lose type thing, right? So, hey, we just made these investments and we did really, really good. So we're going to take humongous commissions. And then next month, we just made these investments and they were terrible. We lost tons of money, but we're still going to take our commissions. So 30 countries have privatized their Social Security since 1981. Yeah, yes. Canada has kind of a privatized. Australia has, other places as well. But I think the politics of it, if I have to be fair. If privatization is done right, and it could work, but I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the politicians that would be in charge of that. So especially now, considering private equity is so deep in there, they're going to have, first dibs on everything. Hi, Ed. Do I get charged the extra premium for Medicare because I make too much money in the years prior to me retiring? Yes, but you can appeal that. So you're talking about the IRMA, the income related monthly adjustment amount. So if you made over, it's based on your earnings from 2 years ago. So if you made over, the 200,000 or so, depending on whether you're married or single, 2 years ago, you will get charged the extra premium for Part B and Part D. But that last word that you included in there means you appeal it. It's an SSA 44. So when you get your Medicare, and if it's more than $185, then download the SSA 44, and it's for the life-changing event. And you fill that out and say, yes, I did make $1 billion 2 years ago, but I stopped working last month or 2 months ago or last year or whatever the case may be, and they will set it back to $185. So what did you do in all your years in government SSA to stop all the fraud and waste? Yeah, quite a bit. Our office shut down a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people working and receiving disability benefits that shouldn't. We shut those people down. doctors that were receiving benefits, we shut them down. Medicare places, yeah, we shut a lot of them down. So yeah, and that's the thing, Lenny, is Elon Musk and Doge are looking for a pot of billions of dollars at Social Security to where they can push one button and said, look, we've fraud, waste, and abuse, billions of dollars we found there, but that they're not going to find it. They thought they found it with the 20 million or 15 million or deceased people on that have received Social Security numbers, and you notice they've found $0 because the database they're looking at doesn't issue money. There's zero money in that database. And I've said that from day one. What are they looking over here for? There's zero money there. Waste your time. Okay, go ahead and fix those, but there's zero money there. So that's why they're moving on to, attacking immigrants and stuff. So look at the Doge website. And sure, they've closed down some offices. Social Security has always closed, opened some offices, closed down offices. And so there is fraud, waste, and abuse. But the fraud, waste, and abuse that Social Security has are individuals, people that are receiving disability benefits, that are working, that are no longer disabled, people filing for early retirement that are working over the $1,950. Not really fraud, waste, and abuse. They're just people, working over the limit. So, and that takes employees in offices to address those, to do CDRs, continuing disability reviews, to do SSI, RZs, redeterminations, limited issues, to send out work reports. And yeah, and with you, when you fire all the people that actually find the fraud, waste, and abuse, then yeah, that means you're not really looking for fraud, waste, and abuse. So they're looking for a big billions of dollars of, and they're not going to find it, not with Social Security. And that begs the question, why aren't they going where the real money is, the Department of Defense? The Department of Defense hasn't passed an audit in years, but Social Security has passed every audit with pretty much flying colors for the past 31 years. So, all right, I have to be fair. The Department of Defense, one part of the Department of Defense did finally pass an audit last year, year before last. And I'll give you one guess which part of the Department of Defense passed an audit. United States Marine Corps. That's right. The United States Marine Corps was the only part of the Department of Defense that passed an audit. All the rest of them, not so much. So there, take that. Thankfully, Bella, what's up, Bella? My Medicare Advantage card was recharged today, as always on the 1st for groceries over the counter. My medical coverage is still active. Now to see if my check comes on the 3rd is so stressful. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for Bella. I just got a question about this today in my YouTube comments. People say that, I don't have control over what commercials come during my live Q&A. But people said, Ed, you keep talking about those grocery cards, the Medicare Advantage card that Bella talks about. And you said they're scammy and stuff. But then a commercial pops up in your channel. And I'm like, well, I don't have real control over what YouTube decides to do in the commercials. But I say they're advertised in a scammy way, but they're not scams. Okay, here's what they are. Bella can attest to this. So if you have Medicare Part A and Part B, you can also get a Medicare Advantage plan, and it depends on your particular area. You just there might be an over-the-counter card, a flex card, grocery card, whatever they call it. It's all the same thing. The Medicare Advantage plan, has that offers people to try to get you, to join their particular plan, and they do exist. The scammy part of this is that Medicare insurance agents and companies, somewhere in the country, particularly on Facebook, they take the best one in the country. So they take one, let's say in Paris, Texas, and they find one in Paris, Texas, a grocery card that gives you $1,000 a month and free ice cream and unicorns for life. And they said, oh, that's the best one in the country. Now let's advertise it to everybody in the country. And then you call from Homestead, Florida, and said, hey, I want free ice cream for life. And they said, do you live in Paris, Texas? I don't live in Paris, Texas. I live in Homestead, Florida. Well, sorry. But then they got you on the phone, and that's what they wanted, to get you on the phone. So are those available? Yes. Are they legitimate? Yes. Is it $1,000 a month or $200? It really depends on your area. And again, you can reach out to chapter and they can see if one of those is available in your area. And then, and if the open enrollment period is now officially over, it ended yesterday. So up until yesterday, you could change your Medicare Advantage. You could review your Medicare Advantage. Well, you can always review your Medicare Advantage plan, but you probably won't be able to change it until October unless you move. If you move, you need to change your Medicare Advantage plan, your Part D plan. If you're moving, if at all possible, always check Medicare supplement plans first and see if they're best for you, if they work for you. Usually it's a budget issue that they don't work for people because it's a budget issue, but always check Medicare supplement. So anytime you're about to go on to Medicare, new to Medicare, or you move or some other special enrollment period that you have, always ask whoever you talk to about Medicare chapter, whoever, say, okay, before I get into my Medicare Advantage, before I get into my Part D, am I eligible for a Medicare supplement plan? And if so, what are they? Tell me about it. What's the difference between N and a G and all that kind of stuff? And if you say, oh, okay, well, that's not for me, then, you check your Medicare Advantage. From day one of this administration, I was hoping for some support for the average citizen, not one thing good for us. I always try to be fair. I think this is, I think this is phenomenal. That's why I say I think I think Elon Musk is a double agent. He is doing more to support Social Security than has been done in decades. And how is that? Is because he's clearing the decks of all the BS that politicians have been using against us for decades. We call our politicians and say, hey, what are you doing to make sure I don't get cut to my Social Security in the future? And they distract you by saying, well, the trust fund has been stolen. I'm looking for it. And as soon as I found it, I'll stick the money back in there. Well, guess what? It wasn't stolen. Elon Musk and Doge didn't, illegals receiving all this money. So Elon Musk and Doge are clearing the decks of all the BS. And now we can go back to having a serious conversation. The only clown on this video is Dr. Ed. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I would agree with that sometimes. Okay. All right. Let me get to someone else here. Also, private long-term disability is a scam. You get injured at work, you get your Social Security, and then the private insurance kicks you off for whatever reason they make up or try to screw you with. Yeah. And that's what I guess private, they want Social Security to do the same thing, is, become, like long-term disability. So people that, get some type of long-term disability thing, a lot of the long-term disabilities of private companies, they obligate you to also file for Social Security disability benefits. And then once you get those benefits, then they, offset. Quite often they offset. All right. The Biden administration gave millions of illegal alien Social Security numbers. No, they did not. No. Yeah. Come on. We need to have a serious conversation, and you are not helping at all. So somehow I knew that it would all end up being all the illegals' fault. Yes. For Social Security problems, more like all taxes paid by illegals who will never be able to claim. They probably plan to pocket. Yeah, more. Yeah, it's always, look at that guy. What is it the old say is, if you point at something, there's always three fingers pointing back at you, right? So government has $3 trillion coming to maturity and needs to refinance $6.2 trillion in 2025. Okay. All right. It's a general budget, but Social Security is actually, Social Security is not in debt. There's a 2.7 trillion right now. The problem is it's slowly being used. Oh, good. Climate change is going to kill us in 8 years anyways. All right. If you remove the cap on contributions, then remove the cap on benefits. Yes, absolutely. And that's, if you look at my YouTube description, it has, the solution to make sure your cuts don't happen to your Social Security check. And that solution is to smash the cap. But, you remove the cap on benefits. Yeah. Well, remember, benefits, people that have a higher average income throughout their life get a lower percentage. So if you are a super low income worker throughout your life, you get about a 90% return of what you paid into Social Security. If you're a higher wage earner, you get less than 30%. So and that's been like that since 1935. So, I mean, it's always been like that. You don't need legal status to have a social security number. Ed is lying or doesn't know the system. TINs are already handed out like candy. Yeah, and those are TINs. So you just kind of you kind of just went against what you just said. So are you two different people? Notice how none of the Trump cultists want to talk about Trump. They only want to talk about Biden. Yes, it's interesting. Let's see here. And we've been saying it for years, and I said it wouldn't. I was an HR payroll director, raise the cap. Yes, raise the cap. All right, John, people who are generally disabled should be getting a lot more money because there are so many people who take advantage of corrupt lawyers paying corrupt doctors to say they are disabled. Yeah, that was a big thing in West Virginia. There was an administrative law judge that was using local doctors, and that became a big scandal in West Virginia. And they caught that guy. I think he's still in jail and had to pay massive amounts of restitution and stuff. Yeah, and I agree, John. People are receiving disability. Some people are receiving disability benefits incorrectly that they shouldn't. They're working or they're no longer disabled. They had some type of operation and now they're able to work, whatever the case may be. But you can't do that. That's an individual type thing. You have to have somebody in the local Social Security office, do the continuing disability review, reach out to the person, have them, do another medical review with a Social Security doctor and go through the whole process. And that happens every single day throughout the country. And that's done by Social Security employees. But the problem is, when you cut Social Security employees, they can't do that anymore. So, yeah. So in order to, allegedly end fraud, they're actually increasing, individual cases of fraud. Thanks, Ed, for dispelling most lies, using fears for their own gain. Yes, the manufactured fears. Yeah. Truthfully, I think the people that are destroying Teslas are the same type as January 6ers. They are mad, making people who are angry at Elon came into the picture. Okay, I'm not sure about that one. Let's see. Undocumented people get Social Security numbers so they can work. They pay into the system, but can't collect on the monies they pay in. That's correct. One thing, Christy and everybody else on that, yes, she is correct on that. They work under fake Social Security numbers. They go to the local swap meet and get a Social Security number. And the reason they're able to do that is because employers, who, probably American citizens, Americans, hire them. You should do kind of like prostitution type thing, forget about the prostitutes, throw the Johns. So, is that a good analogy? But anyway, you know what I mean? So the people that hire, the illegals, throw a bunch of those in jail. And then, that will end. But obviously then, prices are going to go up from, wow, prices, and talking about inflation then, or they're already having issues of, agriculture and throughout the country. But anyway, so the people that are in this country illegally and they work under, just some Social Security number, be careful out there if they happen to use your Social Security number. So this is one of the many reasons I always tell people to go into Social Security, go into ssa.gov, set up a My Social Security account, and check your earnings. Because number one, that's how Social Security determines how much you're going to make from Social Security for the rest of your life. Retirement, disability benefits, survivor, spouse, whatever the case may be, is based on how much you actually paid into Social Security. So you want to make sure those numbers are correct. But also, every now and then, even if you're collecting benefits, go into that website every now and then and look. And if you're fully retired, and you're 70 years old and you're fully retired, and all of a sudden you go into your earnings record and you see that you made $50,000 last year in some other part of the country, somebody is using your Social Security number and they're paying into your Social Security. And you're like, awesome. That means my benefit amount goes up. It does until it doesn't. Eventually they will catch that person and they will see that they're using that Social Security number, because the employer will have a record of it. And number one, they should ask, why did you hire someone that you know you should have checked that Social Security number? Social Security has a system that employers are supposed to check, but the employers want, cheap labor. They want to fire the American citizens because they cost too much and they want to hire someone, anyway. So they will find that person and then they'll turn it over to Social Security, and then Social Security will look at that Social Security number and say, hey, okay, these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, we're going to take that off your record. And then guess what? You're going to have an overpayment because someone else worked on your record and you didn't notify Social Security. So it's important that you check every now and then and say, hey, those are not my earnings. So, or they will be, held to pay later. Okay, let me get some other people here. Mo, I am 62 and retired from the county. My pension is over the limit. I don't know about over the limit. No pension is over the limit. If I remember correctly, you said one of your videos that pension does account toward income. Is that right? No, it's not. So yeah, that's why I said pension is, if you're receiving $1 billion from a pension, that's not over the limit, because that's awesome, right? No, it does not count against your Social Security. It does not count against early retirement benefits because a pension is not considered earned income. So you didn't actively work for, you obviously worked for that pension, but that's money that you didn't punch the clock to receive that money. That's money from a pension. It doesn't affect retirement benefits. It doesn't affect surviving spouse benefits. It doesn't affect spouse benefits. It doesn't affect SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. The only thing it would affect is SSI, the welfare-based program. But nope, doesn't affect anything whatsoever. So, all right, let's see here. Chapter Sarah K got me a Medicare A, B, Medigap, and a drug plan. All right, you got the full boat. Good deal. So yeah, A, B, and the Medigap. So you got the Medicare Supplement plan, Medicare Supplement, Medigap, same thing. People always ask as well, does Chapter do like dental or vision? And this is one of the reasons I chose Chapter, is because they're like me, and it's like dental and vision, unless you've got serious issues. Most people, even with dental health, because Medigap doesn't cover dental or vision or hearing. Original Medicare should have covered it a long time ago, but anyway, I won't get into that. But Medicare Advantage plans, some of those do have some type of dental, vision, and hearing, but Medigap, Medicare Supplement plans don't. So Mark, Chapter doesn't do that. I don't do that. Go to your dentist and the one you're comfortable with, one you've been using for a while, and say, hey, I just got signed up for Medicare and I did the smart thing and I got a Medicare Supplement plan, and those don't cover dental. What do y'all use here? And then they probably have some insurance that they like to deal with, or they say, you know what, Mark, your teeth are good. Just, pay me cash and, we'll do this, that, and the other. So yeah, sorry, people that sell dental insurance out there, but if you get help out of this, great. Just don't fall into this liberal beliefs. We are Americans first. Yes, exactly. We are Americans first. And that's the last thing politicians can use against us, is calling each other name. And I've got a slide I put up for that. People, rather than solving the problem, they want to call people the names. And that's what politicians have trained us to do, to separate us. So I say, okay, you're right. I'm a libtard, fascist, radical, left-wing, right-wing, communist, socialist, fearmonger, reactionary, extremist, liar, Marxist, authoritarian, traitor. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, how can we make sure your Social Security check doesn't get cut in the future, right? How can we make sure you're getting everything you're entitled to now? So we need to stop playing the politicians, tricks and trying to distract us and attack each other. Everybody on here supports Social Security. Everybody on here wants to make sure their Social Security check is not cut in the future. So we're all on the same page. That's what's great about this. Because there's a limit, if you're making that much, you don't need it. Oh, you probably talk about the FICA cap there. So, all right, we are close to over an hour. Let's see, Ed. I feel the military audit question was a setup. United States Marine Corps vet from a U.S. Air Force vet sister. Yeah, it was a tad bit of a setup. But anyway, Medicare is head over heels with fraud, in particular from the claims for COVID testing that thousands of seniors who never had these services. Yeah, Medicare definitely. That's definitely Medicare, Medicaid. There's definitely some begin fraud type issues in there, but let me address Medicare fraud. So there's two ways to do Medicare fraud. There's original Medicare way, and then there's Medicare Advantage way. So original Medicare, if you have like Mark, he has original Medicare, he's keeping his original Medicare, he has a Medicare supplement, so he continues to have original Medicare. So when he goes to the doctor and the doctor says, hey Mark, you need this, done. If it's medically necessary, done. You get it. Okay. And then if that doctor, someone drops the dime on the doctor and says, hey, that doctor is doing things that he shouldn't do, then Medicare sends out the inspector general and shuts that clinic down, shuts that doctor down, throws them in jail, and fines them, whatever the case may be. So after the fact, they go after it. The other way to go after Medicare fraud is how Medicare Advantage plans do it. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan, if you go to the doctor and the doctor says you need X, Y, and Z, before you get X, Y, and Z, the doctor has to get prior authorization from the health insurance company. And some of them were using AI to deny those and whatever the case may be. So that's how they do it. So you can, if you want to get it ahead of the game and, have a health insurance person, double check your doctor and all that kind of stuff. Or if you want to just, if your doctor says you need it, you need it, you need it. So those are the two ways. So I know Dr. Oz, who is going to be possibly the new head of CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the new head of Medicare, is a big, big, big fan of Medicare Advantage plans. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, and all that kind of good stuff, and we'll keep you up to date on all of this. All right, I'm out of time. I will be back, I think, tomorrow, and I'll come up with another topic, and we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. So please